Have the Dallas Cowboys finally decided where they're going to play Tyler Smith moving forward? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys. Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And Landon, we actually got some Cowboy updates. Like, believe it or not, we're late March, and we finally have some Cowboy updates. Some good, some bad. Let's start with a comment that Mike McCarthy made this morning at the owners' meetings about how the plan is to leave Tyler Smith at left guard moving forward. Is that surprising to you?
That's kind of a loaded question because, I mean, in some ways, I guess it's surprising in the sense that literally yesterday we heard that Jerry was very open to moving Tyler Smith to left tackle. But, you know, in the context of guys, you probably should never believe Jerry Jones. No, it's not that surprising that Mike McCarthy comes out and says the opposite of what Jerry said. So, listen, I tend to think that, and I didn't really comment too much on what Jerry said yesterday, but now that Mike's out, I'll comment on both of them. I tend to think that this is all chum, right? Like the Cowboys have very clearly lined things up for offensive line to be the pick that they take at 24. So they have to do something to kind of counteract the narrative so they don't have teams lining up to trade to 23 because they want to take the tackle that they think the Cowboys are going to take at 24. So, or the center or whatever. Right. So part of me, when I heard that, was just like, who cares what Jerry says? It's March. It's late March. Like, I don't think we will hold anything. This was about the same time that I'm pretty sure Mike McCarthy came out and announced that we're going to be a running team last year. Pretty sure it was the same time around the last year that we heard several other rumors that just did not come anywhere close to true. So,
well, I can remember one. Remember last year it was at the owners meeting, Landon, when we heard, hey, Terrence Steele, he might be a guard this year for the Cowboys.
That was the other one I was trying to reach for. Yes, exactly. I mean, guys, like this not only is this silly season, but anytime Jerry opens his mouth, it's silly season. So like, I really have a hard time like getting worked up about stuff that Jerry says right now, like this, because it's like ultimately, he's playing the game. I think that there are times when everyone kind of takes what would normally be just normal GM chatter. They're like, okay, whatever. But because it's Jerry, they for some reason believe that he's like, being completely honest and truthful because he can't help himself. Let me be clear. Jerry Jones still can lie. It still has the capacity to lie, and it will do it to your face, and will do it with expert ability. So I think the McCarthy, I think what McCarthy is saying is probably closer to true because McCarthy is just like, oh yeah, we like our guys. We like them a lot at guard. I think Jerry is trying to spin things so that like it's not as obvious what the Cowboys are doing with their first pick, even though actions speak louder than words, guys.
I think there's a lot of reasons for McCarthy to say this, and I actually think he's telling the truth. The first reason is I just think Tyler Smith is better at guard. Like if all things are equal, I think the Cowboys would love to leave Tyler Smith at left guard because he played at an all-pro level last year. If you're watching with us on YouTube right now, you can see the advanced stats from PFF: pass block grade 83rd percentile, true pass set grade 85th percentile, gap block grade 96th percentile, zone block grade 86th percentile. Like there were very few guards in the NFL that were better than Tyler Smith last year. And this was Tyler Smith's first year ever playing guard for a full season. Remember, played left tackle in 2022, and then at Tulsa was a left tackle. So in his first year ever playing guard, he was an all-pro caliber offensive lineman. I also think when you look at their roster, I think it's easier to assume that you leave you leave Tyler Smith at left guard. You've got Brock Hoffman and TJ Bass who could compete for the center job. Go out and get a tackle in the free agency of the draft, and then at least you're ready to play. To me, Landon, this lines up to like the Cowboys are going to be drafting a tackle in round 1. I know there's some rumors and reports that center is maybe more likely. I kind of disagree. I think tackle is the far likelier pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, watch. This is a good life advice, honestly. Watch people's feet. Don't watch their mouths. And I think when you look at the way that this thing has lined up, look, they just let their starting left tackle, who has played for this team as a stalwart of this offensive line, a face of the franchise in many ways, despite giving, I think, a grand total of 2 interviews in his 10 years with the Dallas Cowboys.
He's already given more with the Jets. That I know. I hop on Twitter and I see more quotes from Tyron Smith. Like, where was this?
I never heard his voice before. It's amazing. No, and look, it's not just coincidence that I've been saying this for days now. It's not just coincidence that the Cowboys had a hard limit on how much they were willing to pay Tyron Smith in the same year that there's an incredible draft class of offensive tackles. It's not just what a lucky coincidence that happened. Come on, guys. Like, Will McClay is smarter than that. And whether however you feel about the Joneses, that's fine, but they listen to Will McClay. So I tend to think that tackle is a prime target, which again points back to why Jerry is trying to throw everybody off the trail of tackle, right?
Yeah.
I do think there's one nugget of truth in there that I do believe. I do think that if absolute disaster happened, they get wiped out in the first round or whatever combination of things had to happen. I think that they honestly, if they had to start that offensive line with TJ Bass and Brock Hoffman, or let's say TJ Bass and then a drafted center in the 3rd round or something, and Tyler Smith playing left tackle, I do think that they would be okay with that.
Or a different situation. Maybe let's say you do get wiped out at tackle and like Tyler Guyton and Jordan Morgan go way higher than you think.
Yeah.
Maybe you draft a receiver in round 1. Defensive lineman in round 1. Round 2, you draft my guy, Cooper Beebe, right? And you have him slide into left guard. TJ Bass and Brock Hoffman are competing at center. And now Tyler Smith's your left tackle. I think that scenario is a little bit more unlikely than the one that you laid out. But I do think there are different avenues that the Cowboys can go down if they do get wiped out at tackle. Or maybe they wait to the 3rd round and try to get Tanner Bortolini or the guy from Arkansas. Like, there are options at center if they want to wait.
Yeah, I think the worst case scenario that they've provided for themselves is tolerable for them, right? And that is an offensive line that's Smith, Bass, Hoffman, Martin, and Steele, right? If that had to come to fruition, they feel like they could play with that. But I also think that is still a not the ideal situation.
There'll be a draft pick in there,
right?
I almost feel like, I mean, the worst case scenario, I know that you laid out that as the worst case scenario, but to me, like, the worst case scenario is round 2, you draft a Cooper Beebe, or round 3, you draft a Tanner Bortolini, and one of those guys is probably starting for you. And then Tyler Smith starting at left tackle. Like, to me, that's the worst case scenario.
Well, I would say, listen, I think you and I are in alignment that there's just zero chance that the Cowboys are getting out of the top 3 rounds without some offensive lineman. Just zero.
Exactly. Yes.
I would say that there is also a chance that if you draft an offensive lineman in the 2nd or 3rd round, that they may not be the day 1 starter at their position on the offensive line. So the absolute fallback is what we just described. But I agree with you completely. There's no way that they're going to look at that situation and go, nah, we'll pass on offensive linemen in the first 3 picks. I just don't believe that.
I'm still interested to see what they think of Awesome Richards and Matt Waletzko, because the fact that they haven't brought back Chuma Edoga makes me think that they really like their tackle depth, maybe more so than what outside people know.
And listen, I mean, I was the guy as much as anybody last year that was singing the praises of Awesome Richards, what I thought he was able to do. Look, he was a 5th round pick, and he came in and was able to play really decent snaps at left tackle. Was he dominant? No. Was he good? No, he was not. But I mean, to come in as a 5th round rookie and be slightly below average and not get yourself killed. Look, was he Chaz Green? He absolutely was not.
No.
So, like, I think that shows you that you've got a little something as a tackle. So, we're all talking about drafting these guys, and obviously we're looking to upgrade the position, right? But I also am interested in these younger guys because I really do believe. I believe Waletzko can develop as well too. He just has not had a chance. He's got to stay healthy and got to get more opportunity. I'm thinking a whole off season with this. I can't wait to see what he looks like this in training camp. And the same goes for Austin Richards, just based on what he did while they got the opportunity to play. So, am I like leaning on those guys as as the replacement starter for Tyler Smith? Absolutely not. But to be part of a committee or to be part of a group to potentially compete to be the backup, the swing tackles, or a potential option in the future to be a starter, those things I think are still on the table for those guys.
Speaking of health, we got some injury updates from 2 of the Cowboys' top draft picks from last year. We will dive into that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all of the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All-in prices show your total up front so you know that you're getting a great deal before you check out. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We want to let you know about Locked On Sports Today. Are you tired of watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you tired of having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Landon, we've got 2 big injury updates for the Cowboys. Let's start with Mazi Smith, who had shoulder surgery early in the offseason. It sounds like it was pretty quickly after the season.
Yeah.
The expectation is that he will be ready for training camp. But how much does this concern you, in a year where the Cowboys really needed him to take a big leap?
Yeah, I mean, it has some concerns. I mean, it's obviously not that surprising that, players get surgery in the offseason. It's unfortunate that, it's shoulder at times, depending on what you're trying to do. But I think that, he still has the opportunity to kind of get, do some workouts, get some lower body stuff in. It was done early enough that you feel like he's going to have time to recover and be cleared for everything you need for training camp and hopefully OTAs as well. So, it's concerning in the situation that, like, we've heard. I mean, I don't even know what to believe about the weight anymore, to be honest. So I do think in the sense that he needs that to put some weight on, and he is going to be kind of asked to kind of go back to more of a role that he had in college. I think it's concerning that way. And I don't know how well he'll be able to kind of gain upper body weight with a shoulder injury. So yeah, it is concerning, but it's tough without kind of knowing the specifics of his timeline, like how much is going to affect his ability to, really get some good offseason work in. Obviously, it will limit some of his work. There's no doubt about that. And that's unfortunate. The question is, like, how much is he going to be limited? What kind of work will he still be able to do? That sort of thing.
One of the things that I was curious to know is, when did this injury happen? Like, did it happen in training camp? Did it happen at the end of the year? Seems like it happened in early November. And that's Cowboys actually had to go out and get a custom shoulder, basically shoulder pads for him on the one side to kind of protect it a little bit. One of the things I will say about Mazi is didn't miss any time. Now, I know the performance was up and down as a rookie, but I do think it provides you some toughness with Mazi Smith that he played all 17 regular season games and he played in the postseason. And I get it. Like when you draft somebody in the first round, just appearing in games isn't what you want. But I've got to believe it did impact his play down the stretch.
Oh yeah, I mean definitely. I mean, and I think if anything, it provides you some context with what happened, right? Like, because I listen. I mean, I think because of who he is and because of being a first round pick, obviously we were keeping pretty close ties on exactly where his performance was going throughout the year. And there was a point, in the middle of the season where it really felt like he was starting to, catch on and his grades were getting better and he was playing a lot better football. I would be interested in kind of seeing exactly when that injury happened, because I do wonder like exactly how much it did have an impact. But look, I mean, think about what he's being asked to do on a snap by snap basis. He's being asked to control offensive linemen and control guards, limit movement of these guys to getting to the second level, physically trying to move people out of gaps with a hurt shoulder, a shoulder that's so hurt that you need to have surgery. Obviously that's going to have an effect. So, yeah, I mean, I think you're right in the sense that it shows a certain level of toughness in your first round pick. Maybe that's not what Cowboys fans want to hear as far as results or production from a defensive tackle. But at the same time, guys, like we talked about the fact that this and tight end, as we're going to talk about, are positions that, it takes a little bit to kind of get used to the speed of the game and get used to what you're having to do to grown men pushing and pulling you around. And now doing that with a shoulder that's so hurt that you have to have surgery, I can only imagine.
So again, the timetable here is 4 to 6 months. If we assume that he got it early February and you go to the 6 months, that's still that's early August, right? When do the pads actually come on camp? Is it like second or third week of August usually?
Yeah, I mean,
a little earlier than that, maybe.
It's a little earlier than that, but I think that's again you're looking at the top end of the.
So I think it's fair to assume by the time we get to the first preseason game, he should be 100% or close to 100% healthy.
Yeah,
which is the important thing. Like we want to make sure that he has the entire training camp to get up to speed because they're going to need him. I'm a little bit more concerned about Luke Schoonmaker, who also had a shoulder surgery this offseason. Now, the report is that he just got his done recently. Let's assume March. So again, we don't know what kind of surgery he had, but the expectation is that he'll be ready to go for training camp as well. The reason I'm concerned about Schooney is the injuries are really starting to pile up on him, and we're going into year 2 of the NFL. Like this is his second shoulder surgery that he's had. He dealt with a foot injury last year. He had a knee injury at Michigan. Like I'm just worried that maybe his body's not going to be able to hold up to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's not double count stuff. That's my only issue here, right? Is we don't know exactly what happened with Schooney's situation. Like if it's a cleanup situation, right, from the previous surgery, that's a little bit less concerning, right?
But if it's a major surgery, if
it's a second corrective major surgery on a shoulder, that means that either the first surgery didn't go well or the first surgery didn't take, and that there's still
it's just a new injury, which is almost worse.
I mean, I guess it could be that too, right? Or a re-injury, right? I tend to think that like without knowing, more specifics, you're right. That like if it is a new injury, it is concerning, and that injuries are piling up. I'm hoping that it's more of a situation where he had a shoulder surgery, he played a season, maybe there's some loose particles or stuff in there he just needed to clean up. Without knowing the situations, it's kind of hard to comment beyond that. But I think your general long-term point is correct that it's just a lot of surgeries for a guy, and he's a big guy too. Like that's part of the issue, I think, is that some of these larger human beings, like once they start getting injuries, it can start cascading for them. The good news is that it's not all lower body injuries, or you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know that that's so much better, but I think I would feel I think it is. I would feel worse if he had all ankle and knee injuries,
Sure.
right? Like,
Sure. Or
because
soft
then
tissue
that feels
injuries
like
or
it's
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, because it feels like that's like cascading, and it's like, it's going to compound. This could just be a situation where he's getting a cleanup, and yeah, he's had a lot of time under the knife, but
Yeah.
it may not necessarily portend future surgeries.
Now, again, I'm going to give him some praise. He played all 18 games last year, despite dealing with that foot injury, and then clearly dealing with some kind of shoulder injury. Again, the report from Michael Galkin this morning from the Dallas Morning News is that all systems go for training camp, which is fantastic news. It is just concerning when your top 3 picks from last year, Mazi Smith, Luke Schoonmaker, and DeMarvion Overshown, are all coming back from major surgeries in one offseason.
That part is undeniable. Like, the fact that all 3 are coming back from surgeries is not great. I do think that was the other thing I was going to comment. You reminded me, is that to me, the timing of this seems like a cleanup surgery, right? Like, I mean, I don't think that they just discovered that he needed surgery of some sort, or especially a 4 to 6 month, like, similar to Mazi's surgery just now, right? Like, they monitor these guys all the time. So I think the timing of it seems to me like to more than not likely portend a potential cleanup situation, as opposed to like a full major surgery. But who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. This will be something that we're following throughout the summer to hear any more updates on Mazi Smith and Luke Schoonmaker. So make sure that you're checking out the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Landon, let's talk about a new rule change that the NFL put into effect this morning. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets, because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a number 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's number 1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines. You can even pick who's going to win the entire tournament. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. So we had several rule changes go into effect today, including you can bring up a practice squad quarterback as many times as you want.
That was dumb. I don't like that one. That was a step in the wrong direction. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, the Cowboys just keep 3 quarterbacks on their active roster, so that doesn't really affect them. They can review now some roughing the passer calls, which is great, just like the skybox view, which is awesome. But the big one, it's the kickoff return rules. Like, we're actually going to have kickoff returns now, thanks to the XFL kickoff return rule, which we're not going to go into it super in depth here, but go check it out on NFL.com. Basically, there's a landing zone between the end zone and the 20-yard line. If the ball is kicked in that area, you must return it. All players, except for the kicker and the returners, are going to be within 10 yards of each other. I think starting at the 30-yard line of the return team.
Something closer.
Yeah. It's fun. I watched a ton of videos on it this morning. It seems like this is really going to bring back the kick returns in the NFL.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be different, but that's fine, because I think it's different in a positive way. And look, I'll throw in my 2 cents here as someone who has witnessed multiple people get knocked unconscious during kickoffs when I was playing high school. Like, I mean, it's one of the most dangerous aspects of football, because you got guys who, the old way, right? You had guys who are running full speed as fast as they can down the field, and then trying to collapse onto one player. And let me be clear: the guys who I saw get knocked out were the gunners, or people that were running full speed and lose control or hit somebody and knock themselves out. So it was dangerous to a large degree, and so I am all for trying to create safety, but while retaining some physical aspects here. And I think this has the blend of best of both worlds, right? You don't have a situation where the kickoff coverage team is running full speed down the field, right? Everybody's waiting for the ball to be received before they start making any moves. Everyone's already so close that the action kind of happens sporadically and quickly. I think it's going to change the way that I think it's going to change the type of players you have returning the kicks.
100% agree.
I don't think you're going to need, like, honestly, like Kavonte Turpin may not be necessarily the best choice for this, right? You may want to consider somebody closer to a running back, right? Because you're essentially running behind an offensive line. You're trying to find holes in the lineup that's right there. And it's tight. It's not like,
Well,
it's
I mean,
not like you have huge length.
this is designed for Cordero Patterson, right?
Yeah,
I'm-
no kidding. I think that that it shows you, like, the guys who can break tackles, who can be decisive and get through holes quickly. Honestly, it's almost like a wide zone play where if you can find a crease and get through, you're gone.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like, because there's no other layer back. Well, there's the kicker, but the
That's not a
kicker
layer.
is also, like, I think 35 yards.
Oh yeah, he's a
isolated
ways
by
away.
himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's just zero chance that a kicker in the entire width of open space is going to be able to stop a kick returner. So, yeah, I think it's really neat. It's cool. I definitely think that Bones is going to take advantage of it. I mean, he was without a doubt one of the biggest. Him and the special teams coordinator for the Saints were the two biggest advocates for it. I think they were the ones who actually made the presentation to the NFL Owners Association. So. And if you want to go back, you can go back and listen to Bones talk about it. He had like a whole dissertation like mid-season about the XFL kickoff return. It was really interesting. So go find that. I'm sure it's on DallasCowboys.com somewhere. But him explaining it and why he liked it a lot was really kind of interesting, inside baseball stuff. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's just going to make returns so much more fun because we had like 75% of returns last year be touchbacks. And last year we got to the point with Brandon Aubrey where it was a shock if he didn't kick it out of the back of the end zone, like at the very, very back of the end zone. He made multiple kicks that went through the uprights last year.
That's right.
This year, if that happens, that ball is going to come out to the 30-yard line, which it's a big disadvantage to have, to kick it to the back of the end zone. So you're not going to want to do that. The other rule that I just wanted really quickly before we go, I wanted to bring up to you is the hip drop tackle that the NFL has banned. Now, we got some word that they're probably not going to over officiate it in year one. They're probably going to use more fines than penalty flags. But what is your take on the hip drop tackle being banned?
I think that what you just said should be the permanent situation. I do not think that referees should be legislating this in game. It should be a fine after the game. Look. The referees are already as terrible. Like, they're terrible. They could barely call the game as it is. And let's be honest, part of the issue here, beyond all the other things that we talk about all the time, is that the competition committee is not making their jobs any easier by having them try to officiate all this stuff, in real time at full speed, right? So I just, defense is so hard to play nowadays, and like trying to make a tackle like against some of the world's greatest athletes while having to go through a checklist in your mind of all the things that you're allowed to do to the person while you're trying to bring them to the ground is, it makes it increasingly difficult. And when you don't have what I would call professional folks refereeing these games, it makes it even more difficult. So I would take that completely out of their hands, unless it's absolutely egregious where, the guy is basically pulling out a rope and tying the guy's hands and feet together at the end of the hip tackle and, throwing his cowboy hat in the air like it's the PBR or something. Yeah. Short of that, I would not be calling a penalty on this. Like they I would allow the fines to take the thing. And if there's an egregious case that's obvious, then you call the flag, then you throw the flag, I guess. But ultimately, this seems like something that if the referees are going to be allowed to call this, left to their own devices to call this regularly, it's going to get overcalled all the time by guys that are just trying to make a tackle. And because of the offensive player makes a move and he's got his hands around his hips, like he'll slide down his legs and they'll call that a hip drop tackle. It's so, I think there's lots of room for disaster here. I hope that they try to take this out of the refs' hands as much as possible while calling this in game.
Yeah, I hope they do as well. I also think it's good for the NFL to get rid of this type of tackle because Man, we've seen a lot of really good players lose the rest of the season because of, this injury. Not just Tony Pollard, and there was a play last year against the Lions where Aiden Hutchinson, actually twice, hip drop tackle Dak, and he was very lucky that he escaped both of those tackles without a major injury. It's just such a dangerous play. I think you can teach proper tackling technique. It's going to take a while. Like it's not going to be an instant fix, but I do think this is a good thing to get out of the league. I think we're going to need a few years before we can kind of completely get rid of it. But overall, I do think it's a net positive for the NFL. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm @Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.